being deaf has never been this wonderful. Super Smash Bros., everyone's favorite little crossover game series, which isn't so little anymore because there are almost 100 characters in Ultimate, and it still isn't enough. All joking aside, Nintendo and Masahiro Sakurai's brainchild is one juggernaut of a franchise. And to think it all started as a generic non-crossover fighting game on the N64. It sold a lot over the years, it remains as one of the most accessible fighting games out there, and it's a special occasion for a lot of people. Some entries may be better than others, but I'm not here to talk about the quality of each game here. Today, I'm gonna talk about this guy. Look at him. Isn't he precious? I'd assume it's this for a lot of people since the Wii was the Wii, but Super Smash Bros. Brawl was my first Smash Bros. Game. I could have played Melee on my cousin's GameCube, but no, it was this one. Nowadays, Brawl is considered to be one of the weaker Smash games due to being slow and trippy in gameplay, and generally having less stuff than the likes of Smash 4 and Ultimate, but I've never really agreed with that. In fact, nowadays I would call this game my second favorite Smash Bros. Just behind Ultimate. But why is that? Well, I could think of a couple of reasons why, which I will get into, but this game gave me an experience that I think no other game has been able to replicate. And again, I assume this was the same for a lot of people because of how big of a juggernaut the Wii was. So today, I want to vomit some of my thoughts on Brawl, and why I think it deserves a lot more credit than it's given, and why I look back on it fondly even after years of improvements by subsequent games. With all that said, grab a cold drink, relax, and let me show you why Super Smash Bros. Brawl is a special game. Before we get into the meat of things, I should probably tell something about my history with the game and how I was introduced to it. 2008 was in the middle of the Wii high. I had gotten my Wii for Christmas the previous year, and I was constantly looking for new games to play for it. I remember I used to borrow game magazines from the library and look at all the reviews and the news for the new games on the 7th generation hardware. Specifically, I was always looking forward to seeing what new releases there would be for the Wii. That's how I learned about Super Mario Galaxy before it was even released, and tried to get it during the Christmas of 2007, only to come home with Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games instead, since they didn't have copies of Galaxy left in the store, but that's another story entirely. Regardless, 2008 was where I was looking to grow my Wii collection. Mario Galaxy was, of course, a big priority, but there were other games I was interested in too, like Wii Play, Mario Party 8, Excite Truck, and Pokemon Battle Revolution. Now most of these, I still haven't gotten to this day, because 10-year-old me had little to no money, and I couldn't even find some of these games in the stores, but maybe on some of these games' part, not getting them may have been for the best. Also not helping was the fact that PS2 was the only other console I had, and games tended to be cheaper for that, so I mostly just bought games for the PS2, leading my Wii collection to be shockingly small. I had like maybe 20 games for the console when I was in senior high, and I already had the console for almost a decade by then. But I'm getting off topic. As you might expect, none of this mattered to a small young child back then, because I do remember 2 games for the Wii that released and I got that year, both of which I learned about from those game magazines. The other was Mario Kart Wii, which I had my fun with, but I couldn't help but feel a little disappointed since it was the follow-up to Double Dash, which is still one of my favorite Mario Karts. The other, however, was Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Now, honestly speaking, aside from seeing it in the game magazines, I don't actually remember what convinced me to actually get this game. Maybe it was the reviews, maybe it was me actually recognizing the name Smash Brothers, since my cousin had Melee, but it could have also been the box art. Mario and Pikachu were there, of course, who I recognized, but I didn't know any of the other characters. The green guy in the front looks familiar, but who's this person in a mechanical suit? How about the angel-looking dude, or the pink ball? Or the fox in the bat, is that a gun? I think I knew Brawl was supposed to be a crossover between Nintendo characters, but the fact that there were so many I didn't recognize was fascinating to me. Of course, I think I looked at the back of the box too. This has Sonic! I don't know either if I got to play this game right away. My parents were very strict about age ratings when I was younger, and I was 10 years old while the game was rated 12+. Now, I don't particularly remember if I had to convince my parents that this game is completely fine, since it has Mario or something, but I do remember that when I was around that age, games rated higher than my age were kind of a forbidden fruit to me. However, I do know I first played this game around this time, so I think there was no specific forbidding from my parents when it came to this game. But enough reminiscing about getting the game. Let's move on to the actual reasons this game is so special. Let's get the obvious out of the way first. This game is very nostalgic to me, and I admit, it does cloud my fair judgment of this game at least a little bit. Hell, you could make an argument that nostalgia is the only reason I hold this game as dear to me as I do. But I still believe I have some actual reasons why this game had such an impression on me even beyond the nostalgia. My nostalgia probably affects these reasons, but nevertheless, I feel like it's something I can make a point about. First of all, I feel like the fighter roster in this game was perfectly balanced. Not in terms of actual game balance probably, but in terms of the character selection. Every Nintendo franchise, up until 2008 anyway, had enough representation with their playable characters. Sure, some of the more obscure franchises were relegated to assist trophies or just normal trophies, but this is a solid lineup overall. And this would be the building block on which Smash 4 and Ultimate would build their rosters, even if they might have tipped a little too much on the favor of some franchises. But like I mentioned earlier, I didn't actually recognize many of the characters here when I was a kid. I knew most of the Mario characters and the Pokemon, but a lot of the other characters were pretty unknown to me. Link I think I knew from somewhere, and I might have heard the name Samus Aran at one point or another, but that's about it. This game was my introduction to many of Nintendo's All-Stars, like Kirby, Fire Emblem, and Star Fox. Hell, I'm pretty sure I didn't even know who Diddy Kong was. Now this isn't to say that any of the other Smash Bros. Games couldn't have done this too, but I think a child getting introduced to Nintendo franchises and beyond through something like Ultimate would be pretty overwhelming. Brawl had that balance down and didn't overstuff itself with characters, ending it at an even 35. Not as small as Melee's or 64's roster, or not as massive as 4's or especially Ultimate's roster. But the introductions didn't just end at the playable characters. As some more popular and probably smarter people than me have already stated, Brawl is a museum and a celebration of all things Nintendo up until that point in history. Assist trophies, trophy gallery, masterpieces, Chronicle, all of these and more make me interested in Nintendo's other franchises than just Mario and Pokemon. I distinctly remember looking at the Masterpiece demos for some of the N64 games and wanting to play them, but I didn't have a classic controller or a GameCube controller, so I couldn't play them at all, especially since the demos for those were much longer than the NES games I could actually play. And that was a shame because I really did want to try out Star Fox 64 and Ocarina of Time. Fun fact though, I didn't end up buying these two games in their original form until the Wii U Virtual Console. Guess I didn't want to try them out that badly after all, huh? Maybe it was because I had to rely on Wii Shop cards and eShop cards to buy Virtual Console games back then, which weren't sold anywhere near me. One thing I also remember doing a lot was taking screenshots of the characters and stages with the game's camera function. taking pictures of their different moves and poses. In hindsight, this was probably what netted me the most playtime in Brawl, as I was trying to get all the shots just right. I took pictures of the final smashes, the Pokemon and assist trophies, and all kinds of poses and taunts the characters had, though mostly just the Pokemon. It also showed me just how cool some of these characters were, and I'm pretty sure Zero Suit Samus awakened something within me. And I'm not the only one! Don't lie now. I know I'm not. But regardless, it's sad that a lot of the pictures I had were lost by deleting them because the Wii system memory was filling up, or by losing the SD cards the pictures were on. Granted, I will admit that the gameplay itself wasn't what really pulled me into this game, because again, any Smash game could have done that. But I am still kinda glad it was Brawl that introduced me to the Smash Bros. Formula, since I think this is still the game with most modes. Aside from normal and special brawls, I remember playing a lot of classic event mode, all-star, multi-man brawl, and home run contests. But Brawl still has a mode that no other Smash game has been able to replicate, and that is of course the game's story mode, Subspace Emissary. Now yes, I know that Subspace isn't exactly perfect. The areas you travel through are pretty generic, the adventure is pretty bloated, and it kinda shits itself at the end with the Great Maze and the Taboo fight. But seeing these characters interact and fight together, that was just what the game needed, at least for the 10-year-old. And even today, it's really cool to think that this was basically the first time ever these characters have interacted with each other in an official capacity. So yes, I agree with the popular notion that the cutscenes are the best part of the experience, but just watching them on YouTube or something doesn't really do them justice. When I was a kid, I felt cutscenes were always a reward for beating certain game segments, and it was no different here. Hell, I feel that's true with some of the games I've gotten to play nowadays too. It feels like you're earning the cutscenes, and the game in between is the glue holding them together. And it's just so cool, man. Seeing Mario lose his shit after Link supposedly kills Peach, Lucas and Pokemon Trainer or Samus and Pikachu bonding, Marth, Ike and Meta Knight being badass, Lucario seeing through Snake's disguise, quite literally, the epic confrontation with Bowser and Ganondorf, where nearly everyone come together. It's frankly awesome, and it's so sad that Sakurai doesn't want to do these cutscenes in future Smash games anymore because of the very notion that people will just upload them to YouTube. But even then, I still really like the gameplay of Subspace. It plays more like a platformer, which is more than fine with me, and each boss battle feels like a spectacle. The boss fight against Meta Ridley on top of Blue Falcon sticks in my mind in particular, for better or for worse. I liked it all up until the Great Maze, and while it's not the greatest story mode ever, it still is quite a lot of fun, especially in co-op. But why should this game be remembered? Is it just for the cutscenes of Subspace Emissary? Is it just for the nostalgia factor that many others like myself have for this game? Well, I'm not sure if I can offer a definitive answer, as I am biased after all. But other than simply being a great game and wanting to preserve that great game for future generations, a lot of what I have already explained could be that answer, as well as the fact that we're likely never going to get a game like Brawl again. As I mentioned previously, Sakurai has become disillusioned with adding cutscenes to the games he makes, and with Ultimate, the whole museum aspect of Smash games has started to fade away. It's more about adding more and more playable characters nowadays, and while that is great on its own right, elevating the game from just celebration of Nintendo to a celebration of gaming as a whole, sometimes you start to miss the simpler stuff too. Don't get me wrong, Ultimate and the Smash games preceding it are all great games, but Brawl reminds me just how great things used to be with Smash. I'm not trying to make this an argument of old thing good, new thing bad. I just feel like something like Ultimate makes things too easy, if that makes any sense. Brawl is a game that really felt special, and none of the Smash games after it quite captured the same feeling of specialness. Of course, Ultimate has its own brand of special, but it doesn't replace the great interactions in the Subspace cutscenes or the trophies and their descriptions. In a way, the modern Smash games owe a lot of their DNA to this game, but a lot of things still feel missing in these newer titles. Super Smash Bros. Will always be an event, but it won't be an event in the same way it used to be. I consider Brawl to be the best introduction to Nintendo you could have, because it doesn't overwhelm you, it has a good amount of content, and it has the perfect ratio of all Nintendo had to offer at the time. Despite having been a PlayStation kid most of my life, I think this game is to thank for the fact that I am just as loyal to Nintendo. Of course, there were Mario and Pokemon games I really liked back then, but this game made me really appreciate all of Nintendo's franchises and how cool all of them were in this one game. And the reason I'm saying this is because I've seen other people who primarily played games on other systems get into Ultimate and liking it, but never to the same level of appreciation I got with Brawl. Of course, part of that is the fact that I was a kid back when I first played this game, and I was certainly somewhat easy to please. And I honestly don't know if nowadays, a person with little knowledge about Nintendo would appreciate this game as much as I did, even if it would be their first Smash Bros. Game. But I think the main takeaway I want people to have from this video is this. The next time you remember Brawl, don't remember it for its shortcomings, like the random tripping or generic areas in the story mode. Instead, think back on the great moments in Subspace, the fact that they actually got Snake and Sonic into this game, the oodles of fan service present in so many aspects of the game, or simply the fact that this is where the celebration of Nintendo truly got its start. Because that is why Super Smash Bros. Brawl is a special game. But that's just my take. At the end of the day, maybe Brawl isn't more special than any of the other Smash games, but it is special in its own way, flaws and all. The feelings I got from this game are very hard to replicate, and I don't think we'll be getting a game like it anytime soon. Even 16 years down the line and a shiny new Switch successor in the horizon. I don't know, Brawl is just something else. But did I brainwash people to think the same with this video? Probably not, but I'd love to hear what the people have to say on this topic. Or is it the bubonic plague many claim it to be? This is an interesting topic to me, and I want to hear if Brawl had the same effect on other people at all. But until next time, like, comment, and subscribe. This has been Dragon Guy, signing off.